Let's bring in our first guest for the day, former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Justice Carpio, thank you for making time for us. Welcome back to Storycon.
Thank you.
Hello, Justice.
Good afternoon, Justice.
Good afternoon. Justice, so you're in the headlines again today, no? For I think you gave a few interviews wherein you were quoted as saying itong the prosecution team for the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte has pathways for asking for her bank accounts to be opened up. I wonder if you could talk us through those again.
Yes. Under the Bank Secrecy Law, bank deposits are absolutely confidential, but there are exceptions. One, when there's a written consent by the depositor. And second, in case of impeachment. And third, when there is a bribery case before the competent court. So in this case, there's an impeachment case. And so the impeachment court can grant request for subpoena duces tecum from the prosecution and order the bank to disclose the records. That's I think what's going to happen. And the presiding officer can rule on that, or the presiding officer can choose to throw the request to the body to vote by majority vote whether to grant or not. Well, I expect it to be granted, but of course it can also happen that the majority will deny. And we have a situation just like the impeachment case of former President Erap Estrada, where the second envelope was not allowed to be opened. And so the people got furious. No? So that would be the consequence. So I think I think the Senate should just grant the motion so the trial can continue.
But Justice, you're saying the presiding officer on his own can decide, or he can split the House, but he has the option to decide on his own.
Well, yes, initially the presiding officer, if he wants, he can decide on his own. But if he decides, say, to deny, any member can ask the body to vote. A member who disagrees can ask for a vote by the body, and the issue is thrown to the body. Or the presiding officer on his own can just give it to the body directly. So the bottom line, there will be a voting by the majority.
Justice, on a related issue, kakasabi lang ni Senate spokesperson Tonggol na kung hindi mag-comply yung House dun sa request ng Senate, may problemang mag-proceed yung impeachment sa 20th Congress. So, ano bang tingin nyo rito? Paano pwedeng connected ito do sa remand or referred? Diba? So, baka ganun ang argument ng Senate spokesperson dahil ang framework niya is remand.
Well, the House already submitted the certification requested by the impeachment court that the one-year ban rule was not violated. Ang hindi pa nila sinasubmit, they have submitted the resolution of the House of the 20th Congress, which is now, no? Because we are now in the 20th Congress, pero hindi pa nga nagko-convene. So I expect the 20th Congress, the House, to submit that certification to renew the authority of the prosecution, because that's in the regular course of business naman. Since this is now a new Congress, the authority of the prosecutors will have to be renewed by the House. The Speaker will have to renew that authority. So that will affirm that the House is still interested to continue with the case.
Justice, balikan ko lang yung
Justice,
impeachment. Okay,
ang sabi ni Senator Win Gatchalian kahapon, they are expecting, kasi daw may final na motion ng defense to dismiss the case even before trial. Kailangan daw pagbotohan nyo ng Senate. Ang sabi ni Congresswoman Laila de Lima, pwede naman daw na gawin doon ng Senado, para nga daw hindi ma-dismiss, sabihin lang noted. Tapos itutuloy. Tama ba yun?
Well, the Constitution says once the articles of impeachment are received by the Senate, trial shall proceed forthwith. Now, yung motion to dismiss, hindi, that will not result in a trial. Kailangan trial. So I think, in my opinion, uh, the Senate cannot entertain a motion to dismiss because the obligation, the duty of the impeachment court is to proceed to trial forthwith. Now, let us say the impeachment court will decide to vote and grant the motion to dismiss. So aakyat yung prosecution to the Supreme Court asking that grant of the motion to dismiss be declared unconstitutional. So we will be already sometime in, we are now July, July 29 yung first hearing. So that will be sometime in August when the prosecution will be going to the Supreme Court, and there will be oral argument. So probably by October, November, December, there will be a decision. But by December, the 1-year period would have expired already. The ban would have expired. So the House now can refile the resolution with the Senate. So what will happen is there was just a delay, but you cannot prevent a trial. You can have a delay, but you cannot prevent a trial because the ban will expire by December of this year. And we are already July now. If the prosecution will go to the Supreme Court, aabot probably the Supreme Court, the earliest they can decide it is December of this year. By that time, tapos na yung 1-year ban. So whatever is the decision of the Supreme Court, tuloy yung trial, no?
Justice, balikan ko lang yung the issue about bank records and yung possible, kasi among the things you mentioned in your previous interview was one is to the Ombudsman, the other is yung to the impeachment court. If it's the Ombudsman that does pursue a case, how does it work? Kasi you're talking about an impeachable official. Can an impeachable official be prosecuted while she is in office, even if she's not yet removed? Kasi, di ba, she can only be removed by impeachment eh. But can she be already be prosecuted and, if it comes to that, even be jailed without being removed?
Well, the Ombudsman Charter says that the Ombudsman can investigate impeachable officers for the purpose of filing an impeachment complaint. Not to file a criminal case, but to file an impeachment complaint. And since it's the House that has exclusive power to file the impeachment, so the Ombudsman will have to file its complaint with the House.
Okay.
Just like any other citizen. Na ngayon, let us assume that that the Senate on appeal by the prosecution will, the Supreme Court on appeal by the prosecution will say the 1-year ban was violated, and therefore the articles of impeachment are void. So at that point, the Ombudsman now can request the AMLAC, the Anti-Money Laundering Council, for the bank records in BPI because there is no more impeachment.
Okay, so that's another way of doing it.
Yeah, the Ombudsman there is that window of opportunity for the Ombudsman to request for the bank records because he can now conduct his own investigation, wala na, for the purpose of filing an impeachment complaint, no? Or also, for the purpose of, remember that this is a joint account and the former President Duterte is no longer in office, so he can now be prosecuted. He can now be prosecuted for violation of his for ill-gotten wealth, no? Because that's also a crime. So the Ombudsman will have a ground to ask the AMLAC for the records.
Justice,
Sorry.
linawin ko lang, you're saying the ombudsman can file a criminal complaint related to impeachment. Pero
Only.
the vice president is not immune from criminal prosecution, di ba? Pwede siyang i-prosecute criminally even without impeachment.
Yes, that is a that is a gray area because the Supreme Court has ruled that the president is immune from civil and criminal suit while in
Yes.
office. But there is no similar decision affecting the vice president. So in effect, the ombudsman can take that position that I can investigate for purposes of filing a criminal case. No.
Yes.
Sorry, Justice, did I understand that correctly? So the Ombudsman can request the AMLAC for the bank records simultaneously as the impeachment process
proceeding.
is ongoing, right? Pwedeng sabay.
Well, the charter of the ombudsman says the ombudsman can investigate impeachable officers, but only for the purpose of filing a criminal case. So now, but only for the purpose of of filing an impeachment case with the House.
Opo.
Okay.
Okay.
So dun din yung bagsak. So the end goal is still impeachment because she can only be
Yes,
removed by
impeachment
impeachment.
also.
Okay. Because and it's interesting because of course.
But yung point ni Ami na the vice president is not immune from
not
civil
immune.
criminal suit while in office, that is an open question because that has not been tested. Because right now, only the president has been declared by the Supreme Court to be immune from civil or criminal suit while in office.
office.
That the position of the ombudsman is still not of the vice president is not yet clear whether she can be sued while in office.
And it's an interesting
Kasi
question.
justice, you can be convicted without being removed, hindi ba? Gano'n naman yung korte natin kahit na-convict ka na, pwede ka pa rin to continue holding public office until there's a final ruling from the Supreme Court.
Well, the rule is that if you are an impeachable officer, you can only be removed by impeachment.
Yes.
Okay. But if you are sued criminally and the penalty includes disqualification or removal from office,
Yes.
then that's the problem. Because the problem, you can be sued if the penalty does not involve removal from office. But if the penalty involves removal from office, that's a question whether that can be done. Let's say nakabangga ka, well, you can be sued for damage to property, no? But that will not involve a removal from office, so you can be sued even if you are an impeachable officer.
Right. And it's an interesting case. It's an interesting question right now because, of course, we all know that the Justice Secretary Boying Remulla is applying for the ombudsman position. And it's coming up very soon. Si Samuel Martires is retiring July 27th. And so, there's also, I guess, the question of what, if he does get appointed by President Marcos to the ombudsman, what he might do in that position with regards to this case.
If he is appointed, then he becomes an ombudsman, then he will have to decide whether to ask for the records from the AMLAC.
In relation doon sa binuksang usapin ni Justice, ikaw ba ay pwedeng mag-apply for ombudsman kung may kaso ka mismo sa ombudsman? Ikaw ba ay pwedeng mag-apply sa JBC kung ikaw mismo ay nakaupo sa JBC? Paano yung mga
if you're sitting there, I don't think well, nasa iyo yan, no? Because you can always resign and apply. But if you are sitting, that has not happened yet. But there is no prohibition naman. But of course, it's a matter of delicadeza. You just have to probably resign first, no?
Okay. Justice, if I may, sorry, at the risk of being repetitious, I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right. So, ang sabi po niyo, Bale, is the ombudsman, of course, this is his decision. It's an open thing. He can take the position that he can file a charge and try to prosecute an impeachable official. That because it's never been tested. However, the problem could be if the penalty involves disqualification and removal from office because that is an impeachable official, can only be removed by impeachment.
Yes. If the penalty involves removal from office or imprisonment, because if you're imprisoned, you cannot perform your function anymore, no? So then that's a question because that has not been resolved yet, no? So aakyat si Sara and say that this is equivalent, this will in effect remove me from office without an impeachment.
So from your perspective po, at least from your perspective, medyo malabo yung pursuit of a criminal case by the Ombudsman against VP Sara at this time. Not unless it's
Yes.
done after December, because that's another, for example, that's another filing of another criminal complaint,
Yes.
an impeachment complaint.
Yeah, my position is that while she is sitting as vice president, you cannot file a criminal case against her that would involve her removal from office.
Okay, I think that's clear.
Pero Justice, kahit naman ma-convict dito, you can serve from prison. It has happened to us na, di ba? Yung penalty na disbarment, it will include permanent disqualification from public office. Mangyayari lang yun with finality. Kung meron ng final ruling. So kung sakasakali man, pwede siyang makulong pero pwede pa rin matuloy as Vice President functioning from behind bars until magkaroon ng final conviction which will actually disqualify her from, for example, running again in 2028 or whatever.
Well, ang removal from office kasi, that means you cannot function. When you are put in jail, even if it's that decision is not yet final, you are prevented from performing your function, ang effect niyan.
Pero bakit sila, Congressman Halusos noon? They even had office in Bilibid.
Yeah, because
Pinabayaan sila to continue
Yeah, hindi sila impeachable officer eh. They can be removed by filing criminal cases eh. Ang nakalagay kasi sa atin, they can be only removed through impeachment. So if you file a criminal case and put him in jail, is that removal from office? In effect, that's removal because he cannot function anymore.
Justice, I'm intrigued yung sinabi nyo kanina kasi na if in the event that the Supreme Court voids the articles of impeachment because of the supposed ban on the 1-year bar, by December that actually opens the possibility of the Ombudsman asking AMLAC for the bank records of the Vice President.
Yes, there is that window of opportunity, papasok yung ombudsman dahil wala ng impeachment case.
So gagawin yan for the purposes of impeachment. Not to file a criminal case. Okay ba yun?
Correct.
It will be
Correct.
So this time around,
to conduct an investigation for purposes of filing an impeachment. Dahil wala pang impeachment eh.
Yeah. What if justice ganito yung scenario? Halimbawa, nag-proceed yung impeachment pero nagbotohan yung Senate not to open the bank accounts. Pwede bang ang isang senaryo ay mag-file ng case sa Ombudsman para mabuksan yung bank account na hindi pinayagan ng Senado sa impeachment court? Para lang mabuksan?
Or any other recourse?
Because the ombudsman will have to ask for the bank records from AMLAC for the purpose of filing an impeachment case. Meron na impeachment case eh.
So hindi niya pwedeng gawin yan for a criminal case? No?
Hindi pa pwede yung criminal case dahil may sitting vice president pa that will remove her from office without impeachment.
So that scenario is not possible?
That is not
It's
possible.
unlikely.
There has to be a window of opportunity. Pag dinismiss ng Supreme Court yung impeachment complaint for whatever reason, then pwede pumasok yung ombudsman.
Justice, if I may, I'll just tweak Ronald's question a little bit. kung sakaling the impeachment court nga rejects any motion to open the the bank records, is there any other recourse for the public or for any prosecutor or any agency to get those bank records and put them out in public? Is there any other way to do that?
Well, the problem is the only other remedy is to go to the Supreme Court. But the Constitution says the Senate, acting as impeachment court, shall have the sole power to try and decide impeachment cases. So, sasabihin ng Senado, we have the exclusive
Kami lang yun.
power to try. So, the Supreme Court cannot intervene. Yun ang problema doon.
And actually, I remember during the an impeachment forum that UP Law hosted, during which you were also present, Justice Carpio. I remember the former Ombudsman, Conchita Carpio Morales, saying the Supreme Court should really only step in when there's been a grave abuse of discretion by the Senate sitting as a trial court. So it also raises the question of, would that qualify as grave abuse of discretion, right? If they decide either to dismiss the case outright or to, for instance, not request for the bank accounts, to open the bank accounts.
Well, the Supreme Court will step in if there is a violation of the Constitution. Katulad yung impeachment ni Chief Justice Davide, the issue was when does the one-year bar rule start to run? So, ang sabi ng Supreme Court, it starts to run when the plenary refers the articles of impeachment to the Committee on Justice. So, yung pangalawang or third impeachment, hindi na pwede. Late na yon. Even if it was signed by more than one-third of the members of the House. Because the first impeachment, umabot na was already filed with the Committee on Justice. So, yung mga ganyan, the Supreme Court can step in. But that is not that is not trying the case. Kasi the Senate has the sole power to try and decide the case. Yan ang distinction.
So Justice, based dyan sa nababanggit nyo, the Senate has the sole power to try the case. Kasama ba sa power na yan yung power to dismiss?
Yes, to decide whether to grant, to acquit or convict.
Yes, pero yung to dismiss.
To
Without
dismiss
trial.
kasama na yan
Without
sa ano.
trial. No? Ano sinasabi nila? It's a sole
Yun
power.
ang problema. It can dismiss it after trial.
Yes.
But there has to be a trial dahil sabi ng Constitution, trial shall proceed forthwith. So there has to be a trial.
But
Okay.
at the same time, one of the other problems is parang the Supreme Court is so bogged down with cases lately, no? I mean, apart from all of the cases filed related to this impeachment, meron pa pong yung pagdala kay former President Rodrigo Duterte sa International Criminal Court. They're also grappling with issues over the budget, with the transfer of PhilHealth funds. You know, I wonder if you could give us some insider's perspective, Justice Carpio, on how they would be tackling all of this, in what order of priority, and what the deliberations would look like.
Well, the rule is, like for example, the one-year bar rule. May decision ng Supreme Court that it's triggered when the articles of impeachment are referred to the Committee on Justice. So, nag-file ng kaso si VP Sara saying that the one-year bar rule has been violated. But as long as there is no decision by the Supreme Court, the Senate, as an impeachment court, should continue
With the trial.
its proceedings.
Kasi may
Pag
jurisprudence.
walang TRO, no? Because there's already a decision When do you count the 1 year? From the time the article impeachment are referred. Hindi naman umabot doon sa House. Hindi naman nila nire-refer And per the reply of the House to the answer of VP Sara, if you count session days, because the Constitution says 10 session days.
Not 10 days.
In 10 session days, tamang-tama On the 10th session day, the House submitted the fourth impeachment complaint signed by more than one-third. So that supersedes any other impeachment complaint per the Constitution. So mukhang tama yung House, no? There is no violation of the one-year bar rule. So because
ko lang yung tanong,
hindi pa tumakbo yung 1 year eh. Hindi pa umabot yung first, second, and third complaints to the Committee on Justice. So the way I look at it, the Senate as impeachment court should just proceed because wala namang order from the Supreme Court stopping them.
But Justice, the defense's argument is that the purposeful delay daw of the Secretary General of the House of the three previous complaints is circumvention of the one-year bar. In other words, talagang pinigil daw para pinigil yung pag-usad ng complaints through the Speaker down to the Justice Committee in order to avoid or circumvent the ban.
It doesn't matter
that
because the
seemed to be
SecGen
the
is just
impression.
an
But
employee.
when the House submitted its reply to the answer of Sara, they laid down the 10 session days. They complied with the 10 session days because they have 10 session days to act. On the 10th day, they produced the fourth impeachment complaint signed by more than a third of the members of the House. And that supersedes everything. That supersedes the first three. So there was no need to refer the first three complaints to the Committee on Justice because if there is a resolution of the House signed by at least a third of its members, that automatically becomes the articles of impeachment to be submitted to the Senate.
At saka, di ba,
That
just
supersedes the earlier articles of impeachment.
Yes. At saka, di ba,
So
Justice?
let's just say it was that fourth complaint was submitted to the plenary on the 11th session day. Yun may problema. Because the Constitution says 10 session days. Umabot sila sa 10th day
Yes.
But if they submitted it on the 11th session day, may problema sila.
Yes. Pero for the purposes of argument, Justice, just in case yung sinasabi ni Ed na na-delay dahil sa Secretary General, the Secretary General is not a congressman. He is an employee of Congress. So wala siyang power eh. Hindi pwedeng i-invoke na he represents Congress. He is an employee like any employee in Congress.
Yeah, ang sagot ko to, first of all, there was no delay because the Constitution says 10 session days and umabot sila sa 10 session days.
Yeah.
Assuming there was a delay for whatever reason, can the delay caused by the Secretary General be binding on the plenary?
Yeah.
Pag tinago lang isang employee yan, hindi umabot sa plenary, is the plenary bound by that negligent act or that misconduct of the employee? I don't think it will bind the plenary because that's a dangerous doctrine that pag inupuan yung paper o tinago, bound
Isang
na
empleyado.
yung plenary. I don't think that's a good doctrine, no?
But
Justice, follow-up ko lang yung tanong ni Red kasi sabi nga niya, ang lalaki daw nung kaso ngayon na mga controversies before the Supreme Court. Paano ba yan? Yung sinasabi niyang insider view niya, meron bang triage dyan?
Yung mas urgent.
Niya yung mga kasong
Ano yung pinaka-urgent?
meron bang gano'n? Parang ER?
Although we also know na the Supreme Court tends to stay away from the political questions, so they don't want to touch the
Oo
hot
nga,
potato.
paano yan? Marami ba kayong Tylenol doon sa Supreme Court?
Well, it's difficult to I don't know exactly what's happening there now, but I think they will decide at the proper time. And if they do not decide, they're not deciding now. It's because may prior ruling na eh. Andiyan na yung David Francisco case na yung one-year bar rule starts when the articles of impeachment are received by the Committee on Justice. So the message there is meron ng kaming decision dyan eh. Sundin na lang ninyo.
Actually, and yung itong impeachment case na to, no, has turned all of us into constitutionalists practically because everyone's arguing about their own interpretation
Legal
of the law.
luminaries.
Yeah, as quasi-luminaries. Pero it's interesting to me kasi she is the fourth high-ranking official to be impeached. Although, yes, albeit first vice president, pero pang-apat na po siya. So you would think that there would already be a smooth process around this, right? Pero at the moment, we're still arguing about, you know, the interpretations of the law. Now that you're seeing all of this play out, do you think there's room for updating the Constitution or refining some of the wordings around these issues?
Well, the decisions of the Supreme Court on the interpretation of these impeachment proceedings will guide future cases, no? Like for example, the one-year bar rule. Alam na natin that it starts when the articles of impeachment are received by the Committee on Justice. Ang problema ngayon, what if inupuan? That's another thing because actually, within the 10th day, session day, so there was no delay. Because the Constitution says 10 session days, umabot ng 10 session days. So, clearly, there was no delay. And I'm sure pagdating dito sa Supreme Court, if really they filed it on the 10th session day, wala talagang delay. But supposing there was a delay because the SecGen sat on it, anong effect yun? Well, that's another thing that will have to be decided by the Supreme Court, and whatever that decision will be will guide us in the future. But for me, if it's the act of the SecGen, it's a dangerous doctrine to say it's binding on the plenary. No.
Okay.
Justice,
Okay.
parang huling tanong na lang. Last week, medyo binanatan kayo ni Senate President Chis Escudero na iba daw yung inyong conduct doon sa impeachment ni Ombudsman Merceditas Gutierrez. Ano ba yung sagot niyo ron doon sa banat sa inyo ni Senate President Chis Escudero?
Well, first of all, the situation of Gutierrez is different from the situation of Sara because Gutierrez resigned well after the impeachment was filed with the Senate. When you resign, you're no longer a public officer. So ang ginawa ng Senate, they just dismiss the case kasi wala na, he's no longer a public official, no? So sabi ni Senate President Iskra, bakit hindi raw ako nag-complain? Well, first of all, ibang situation yan. And second, I was already in the Supreme Court in 2009 or 2010. This case came out in 2009 or 2010. I was in the Supreme Court since 2001. And as a member of the Supreme Court, I cannot be complaining because that case could reach us. But what I can say is there is a provision in the Senate Rules on Impeachment. It says the presiding officer and the senator judges shall refrain from commenting on the merits of the impeachment case. So dapat sila ang wag mag-comment. Ako pwede na ako mag-comment ngayon dahil I'm a private sector already. I'm a private citizen. But if I were sitting in the Supreme Court now, I would not comment. Why will I comment? That's not part of my function. That's why when this happened during the time of Gutierrez, I did not comment. And besides, nag-resign siya eh. In the case of Sara, she's not resigning. She has not resigned. So the gag rule is there in the Senate rules. The Senate, the presiding officer and the senator judges shall refrain from commenting publicly on the merits of the impeachment case. Yan ang nakalagay.
It's interesting. Okay,
Okay.
we'll leave that there for now. Thank you so much for your insights today. Former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Salamat,
Thank you,
Justice.
Justice.
Thank you,
Thank
Justice.
you again. Thank you to our viewers.
So